up here because it hasn't, or else am I just a speaker?
No, you're on.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just hanging on for a couple of minutes. We've got a couple of members who are on their way, not quite here yet, so we can just give them a couple of minutes. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll kick off. We've got a packed morning, so hopefully our two members will be able to join us when they get here. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Suffolk County Council Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of March 2026. My name is Councillor Michael Ladd. I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. Normal housekeeping things are the meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be available online after this meeting. Members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded and in line with the Council's published guidance. Could you please ensure your IT equipment, maybe mobile phones, are switched off or on silent? Can I also remind you to please speak clearly into microphones and avoid placing things such as papers or IT equipment in front of the microphone, as this will affect the sound quality of the recording. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so should the alarm sound, that's a real one, so follow me, I'll be first out. In the event of a fire, please follow the instructions that will be issued to you and congregate in the south car park near the Children's Centre. Okay. Agenda item 1 is public questions. We have no public questions today. Item 2 is apologies for absence and substitutions. We have apologies from Councillor Faircloth-Mutton. Councillor Faircloth-Mutton, you may remember, was the Cabinet member at the time of the change on the 1st of June. So I think it's right and appropriate that he has decided not to come today. He couldn't be seen to sort of mark his own homework, as it were. So, but we have welcome Councillor June Mummery, who is substituting for Councillor Faircloth-Mutton. So welcome today. We also have Councillor Judy Cloak. Thank you for attending today. Substituting for Councillor Eddie Back. Thank you. So we've got agenda item 3, declaration of interest in dispensations. If there are any, yes, Councillor Bridgeman. Okay, thank you very much. We'll note that. No others? Agenda item 4 is minutes of the previous meeting. This is the meeting on the 10th of February, which we held in Riverside, Lowestoft, on the Gullwing Bridge. It's on page 5 of your pack. Are you happy that it was a fair and true record of that meeting? And I'll sign as such. I thought that was a very good meeting, actually, and it was nice to take the committee out on the road to the north of the county. Okay, thank you for that. So we're now going on to the main agenda item today, which is the Suffolk Community Libraries. I just want to confirm the objective of this meeting is to consider the progress of the new Suffolk Community Library Services, which was launched on the 1st of June 2025. As members will be aware, we're not here to look at that decision. We're here to look at the transition and to see what has been learnt and what value we can add to that in the future. So, welcome all the witnesses today. I'll ask them to introduce themselves, I think probably starting at this end, if that's okay, and then go down the line, if that's okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Gary Thompson. I'm a senior HR business partner who supported the GP process.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Molly Thomas-Mayer. I'm an Assistant Director for Placemaking, Communities and Inclusion in the Public Health and Communities Directorate here at the County Council, and I have responsibility within the Directorate for the Library Service.
Morning, everybody. Stuart Keeble, Director of Public Health and Communities.
Morning, Scrutiny. Councillor Nadia Chenchi. I'm the Cabinet member for Communities.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Crystal Vittles. I'm the Head of Service for Libraries in Public Health and Communities.
Good morning. My name's Nigel Frostig. I am the chair of the trustees of the Friends of Halesworth Library. Therefore, I'm also a volunteer. I'm coming along to speak in a personal capacity because I cannot speak for 1,000+ volunteers, nor other friends groups or even my own library's trustees, and not for the former Suffolk libraries. I've been in the position throughout the transition, so I've seen it very much at the user end. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Thank you all very much. So I'm going to hand over now to Councillor Chency to introduce the item. It's odd to see you on that side of the chamber at a scrutiny meeting. You're normally over this side, but over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I'd like to say how much I welcome this opportunity for the scrutiny of libraries in order to showcase the hard work and dedication of officers, staff and volunteers since we decided to take it back, it's a year ago apparently, to make it as successful and sustainable. And I would also like to say, because I think this is Councillor Ladd's last scrutiny committee, and having been on that side for many years, that I found scrutiny to be a thorough and efficient committee, chaired by Councillor Ladd and assisted brilliantly by Catherine, so I want to put my thanks on record. It has good cross-party curiosity, and I do know this because I was part of that committee for several years before becoming a Cabinet member. So I'm going to say a few words before I pass you over for questions and pass over for presentation by Molly. And then, well, far away, because as I say, I am genuinely looking forward to you hearing about the progress. So since this has come under my responsibility, I have been briefed regularly and thoroughly with both the challenges and the achievements, and look forward to you hearing the many assets of this precious service across 45 libraries. In your bundle, you have an evidence set, interim library strategy 25 to 26, and some case studies to highlight the importance and progress of this service as a community hub, connectedness, learning, reducing isolation, as well as reading and research. And I just want to stress as well how much we are putting the residents at the heart of all this. This is about the residents. This is not about Suffolk County Council or any that went before. This is about the good of the residents. So the important points that I'd like to highlight since the service was brought in-house, and you'll hear more about this in the presentation, all staff will be aligned on pay and benefits from April 26. No frontline staff face redundancy. 95% of volunteers chose to continue, including most friends groups, and the numbers have grown since, with 6 to 8 new applicants per week. On page 22, Suffolk County Council internal audit team confirms reassurance and a high degree of stability. Customer satisfaction went from 9.7% out of 10 to 9.78, so it has increased. No in-year cuts to opening hours, staffing or stock purchases. Any anticipated costs will be covered by the Transition Fund, which you will hear about more later too. The transformation programme will continue into 26-27. Regular communications with staff, volunteers and communities helped to protect relationships during a very sensitive period and helped maintain clear expectations. Since January 26, work has focused on shaping the 26 to 29 library strategy, and it will set out actions that secure long-term sustainability. The real progress I personally looked for was how our residents are benefiting even more than they did before. We've been able to lean on a larger organisation level, which gives us economy of scale, digital transformation, an anchor across all services such as health and wellbeing, and having more focus on public health and communities, as well as better control. Customer satisfaction has risen, and that was out of 1,610 satisfaction surveys. 197,888 attendees at events and activities. Nearly 38,000 volunteer hours, 24 to 25, which is fabulous, and a new learning partnership for thousands of free courses. I also urge you to look at the case studies from the 1st of June to the 12th of February 26, which are truly heartwarming. And last thing I want to say is when the proposal on the table meant cutting opening hours by a third, the council stepped in to protect access. It is us that has the legal and statutory responsibility, so when there was uncertainty about the future model, we stepped up. Residents care about their libraries being open, and this work ensures that. The charity model did good work for many years, but bringing it in-house gives us the opportunity to strengthen them as community hubs and ensure budgets go to frontline services. So thank you for that. I'll now pass you over to those who have been on this journey daily.
Thank you, Councillor Cenci, and to the chairs, and thank you to the committee for inviting us here today. We've been asked to cover the following areas for the committee. That is how we've ensured service continuity, how staff and volunteers have been supported, how we're meeting our statutory duties, and what the performance picture looks like, and finally the learning and future direction for the service. So in my presentation in a moment, I have drawn on that detailed evidence paper and appendices which Councillor Cenci has referenced, as well as the operational experience. So firstly, what are we required to do? As you know, Suffolk County Council holds a statutory duty under the Public Libraries and Museum Act of 1964. Within that, we have to provide a comprehensive and efficient library service. Those are our key watchwords in all of this. While each service is able to determine what that means for their communities in practical terms, it generally means that libraries are accessible, that they are adequately staffed, well-stocked, digitally enabled these days, and with core services such as book lending and public computer use remaining free of charge. The evidence paper sets out how the duties are delivered in Suffolk and how we are monitored by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. The Council reaffirmed last year that all 45 library sites and the 3 mobile libraries would be maintained with no reduction in opening hours, all important commitments to protecting access and fulfilling the requirement to be comprehensive. This has all been delivered. In addition, mobile libraries continue to play a vital role in our rural areas. And our digital platform, which we call the 46th Library, ensures residents can continue to browse, reserve and renew materials online. During the transition period, all these core systems remained operational and there were no escalations raised by DCMS, indicating the continued compliance with our statutory expectations, and this has continued. But I think more importantly, our priority was that residents would experience uninterrupted library use before, during and after the transition, and that continuity has been achieved. We were asked initially by the Scrutiny chairs to talk about the transition process. So on the 1st of June last year, 349 staff were transferred to the council under TUPE regulations. This represented the vast majority of the eligible workforce who chose to come across, and that ensured continuity of both our local library expertise and the established relationships built up over many years. As I'm sure you will also remember, the transition was delivered at exceptional pace within 52 days. It was a project which involved over 40 officers from across the County Council, from corporate teams such as HR, IT, finance, property, legal, communications and others, all ensuring that from day one, services remained consistent. I would also like to make the point here that we had excellent collaboration from staff and leads at Suffolk Libraries during that whole period, which supported and enabled the smooth transition period. As a result of that work, borrower records, self-service kiosks, public computers, payment systems all continued without interruption. We were so successful, in fact, that a number of staff in branches reported at the time that some customers hadn't realised that the governance of the service had changed. Cards, pins and accounts all remained valid and worked as before. Due to the need to have a new identity for the service, we introduced Suffolk Community Library's name and a new website with that. We phased those changes, such as signage changes and printed materials, over time, and we minimised costs by using in-house resources where we had them and local suppliers wherever we could. Our goal was that services on the 1st of June would look and feel exactly as they had on the 31st of May, and the feedback and data show that we delivered that. As Councillor Cenchy has already referenced, it's really people that are at the heart of all of this. So starting with the staff. Staff retention has remained high, and sickness levels remain broadly similar to the wider SCC patterns that we've seen in the last 10 months. I think this is particularly notable given the extended period of change that this particular cohort of staff have experienced. We do very much recognise how demanding the transition has been, and staff have been supported through SCC wellbeing and HR teams wherever possible, and continue to be so when that is needed. A major development in this period, as Councillor Cenchy has mentioned, has been offering SCC pay scales and terms to all library staff, which will commence from April. This ensures fairness across the workforce and aligns library roles with council structures, which is actually very helpful for management. And again, most importantly, support service staff. Our volunteer base has remained extremely strong. We now have just over 1,000 active volunteers, and as has been mentioned, a steady flow of new applications each week. Friends groups continue to contribute enormously to the lifeblood of all of the library branches and the service overall. Importantly, any of those funds raised by Friends remain entirely for the benefit of their local library. Twice yearly Friends forums will strengthen the link into the broader service governance. Customer experience. Our average satisfaction since insourcing has remained at 9.78 out of 10. That's just how we tend to monitor it. That's virtually unchanged from the pre-transfer period. And again, I think this indicates stable service quality as experienced by our customers. I know from talking to our customer service leads within the council that this is an enviable and impressive result. And again, testament to all the people who collaborate across the service to make that possible. I hope that you have had a chance to read the appendix. I realise it was a long paper, but within that we provided a range of some individual case studies from the last 10 months of all the community and well-being benefit recorded in the libraries. It's just a smattering of what is experienced every day. I think these examples show the day-to-day community impact of the service, directly helping to reduce isolation, as has been mentioned, supporting well-being and helping residents navigate key services. They are representative of those hundreds of interactions that take place every single week. And this is not just sentiment, it is about how we evidence that needed support and help which people are receiving in a trusted place. On a daily basis, libraries continue to support our communities through that practical help, social contact, and being safe, welcoming spaces. And there aren't many places in our communities where I think we can say that generally. And this is a key reason which I, as a public health consultant, care so strongly about this service, because it helps to prevent ill health and protect good health. So on governance, finance and oversight. Since June, we have been integrating the service into SCC's wider governance and financial frameworks. There is a quarterly Suffolk Community Library Strategic Group, regular cabinet member briefings, and the weekly operations group to ensure the correct oversight of performance, risk and finances, and that feeds into the wider governance and leadership at Suffolk County Council. Last month, SCC's internal audit team issued a green assurance rating for the insourcing programme, which has been a positive endorsement of the transition process and how it was achieved. The part-year budget for 25-26 was £7.2 million. This was supported by a £1.8 million transition fund. We have a forecast budget overspend of £0.84 million. This is mainly due to the expected costs of the business rates and relief staffing. This is fully covered by the transition fund. There are no reductions to the opening hours, staffing or book stock. Turning to performance. Borrowing patterns in Suffolk remain broadly stable over the last 10 months, and there has been particularly strong growth in digital borrowing. As has been noted, there has been a modest decline in physical borrowing in the last couple of quarters. However, in in a broader trend, this does reflect national and longer-term trends that have been underway in physical borrowing. Across the country, physical loans remain below pre-pandemic levels and have continued a slow, steady reduction over recent years. Suffolk is following that pattern. Locally, that decline is influenced by some specific factors which we have mentioned. In particular, we no longer look after the management of prison libraries, and that may well be a factor. In contrast, digital usage continues to perform very strongly. Several platforms are recording some of the highest year-to-date figures seen at this point in any year. Overall, our digital use is at record levels. Again, this mirrors national trends where digital formats now account for a growing share of library activity. While it's difficult to be certain about the reasons for all of that, we are seeing a broader shift in how people use library services, which has been happening for a number of years. And I suspect this may indicate that people are changing, combining or alternating the ways they access services to better fit lifestyles and preferences. One point I would like to make in relation to that is while I am very keen to support and promote digital growth, I am also mindful that many customers value physical book borrowing and in particular visiting their local libraries. Through activities and initiatives across all our branches, I am very keen to encourage people into our libraries wherever possible. In summary, and taken all together, Suffolk's combined physical and digital borrowing remains broadly stable and closely aligned with national trends. Looking across the last 10 months, in-housing has confirmed stability for the delivery of our library service. All 45 libraries remain open, mobile routes have continued, and customers have experienced the same familiar frontline service and library offer. We have established a clear governance structure, strong financial oversight and forecasting, and joined up integration with the public health communities and SEC systems and teams. The service remains very well regarded, and we have retained the National Portfolio Organisation status, which is granted by Arts Council England. The interim strategy, which was published early in the transition, signalled how libraries would continue to contribute to literacy, well-being, digital inclusion and community resilience as part of public health and communities. The Year of Reading initiative, recently launched, is already helping to rebuild participation and engagement, and we are looking to utilise this opportunity to remind people of the service and promote the rich offer which is open and free to all. Digital inclusion remains an important priority, and work is underway on the public PC refresh, faster Wi-Fi, laptop loan pilots and the online service upgrades, which should all improve the experience for customers. As Councillor Chenchi also mentioned, the library strategy is also underway for the next period, and we will be reaching out to staff and volunteers to help shape that. So in closing, I recognise that staff and volunteers have experienced this long period of change. Supporting staff well-being, providing communication and training will continue to be essential as we move forward, and we will work closely with volunteers and friends groups who contribute so much to making the service the asset that it truly is. As a collective effort, this means that Suffolk Community Libraries is a service that is stable, valued by residents, evidence-led and positioned for future growth. In closing, the service is performing well. We are maintaining high customer satisfaction and a stable volunteer base, and unwavering statutory compliance. Usage patterns mirror the national trends, the digital offer is growing, and frontline access has been protected. I would like to take this opportunity to express my thanks to the staff and volunteers for their professionalism, resilience, and commitment in continuing to ensure that all of this has happened, and that the library service is the valued and valuable asset that we are so fortunate to have in Suffolk. And I welcome questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much for that very succinct presentation and for all the responses in our papers this morning. Okay, I'll open it up to questions now. Councillor Bridgeman is first up, then Councillor...
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I wanted to talk attendances over the last year. Do you feel they've gone up, down, or around the same? I mean, I actually think, for where I've been looking and having asked, that they're slightly higher or at the very least remained the same. I wanted to know how you measure actual attendance, because I can't see any laser counters on doors, and as libraries are becoming more critical, it's not necessarily nowadays that you would find that attendance through what books, through what stuff they take out. So many more people are going in there just to meet and be part of something. So, yeah, just wondered how you feel they've gone.
I could start the answer to that. So I completely agree with you. On some recent library visits, that's exactly how I experienced the library as well, very much as a community hub with so much going on. I will pass some of the question along to Crystal in a moment, but to say absolutely we do monitor it. I think it's broadly been the same. There might have been a slight downturn, but it's sort of, it is monitored. And I'll ask Crystal to explain how.
Thank you. Yes, we do monitor in different ways. So one of our biggest ways of monitoring is through our footfall counters, which are on our doors. They're very discreet, however. We do have, over the past year, we've had some fluctuations with our footfall counters with any technology, so we're working with the provider to make sure they're as accurate as possible, because it's really important that we get that footfall data. And then alongside that, we also have our borrowing data as well, which shows you, people generally coming in the library. And as well, we have our events and activities data as well, and that is manually counted by staff, because I haven't quite figured out a way to make it very clever and tech-based yet, but there is a means to measure across a range of services.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, just want to put on record that probably anyone in this room who knows me, I'm a committed bibliophile. I'm probably obsessed with books, probably some people would say, although it does frighten me, the diminishing part that books are playing in people's lives. Just two statistics on World Book Day last year, 2025, I heard that the average number of books read by people in Britain now is 2 per year. Well, for that average, if it's got to average out me, who spends half my waking hours reading books, there must be plenty of people who are reading none. The other statistic I will give, the number of schools in Britain without a library has increased from 7% in 2019 to 17% in 2023. But turning to paragraph 53 on page 23, you did reference in your presentation about the decline in book borrowing. I know obviously you'll say that libraries perform a whole load of other functions, but their primary function has got to be books, otherwise we wouldn't call them libraries. Well, book borrowing has fallen from 480,000 to 452,000 in 1 year. If that diminution continues at that rate, in little more than 10 years you won't have anyone borrowing any books. So my question is, I suppose, twofold. Firstly, what are you doing, if anything, to try and address that or reverse that decline? And also, putting it bluntly and starkly, however horrific it would be, if that continues in 10 years' time, can we justify still even having our libraries?
Can I just answer that very quickly? One of the things that I've actually been championing a lot is the year of reading. So the last time that happened, I think, was 2008. So it's been quite a long time. And it's been recognised exactly what you're saying, and especially in young people. And that personally worries me, because my grandchildren don't really read books. So the year of reading, I really do urge you to look at the website, and I urge anybody listening to look at our Suffolk County Council website, specifically on that page. And there's some really fun things to do, like book bingo for children and book bingo for adults. And I think we will see good traction coming from that project, because we will keep plugging away at it for the whole year. But I'm going to let the experts tell you any more about that than you want to. But I just wanted to let you know that as the Cabinet member, I absolutely love that project and sing its song daily. Thank you.
Absolutely. I was going to reference the year of reading as well. It's a fantastic promotional year of events to be able to encourage people to read and to go into libraries. I share with you, I'm a lifelong reader. And I absolutely believe in the power of reading and how important it is for physical and mental health. So the more we can get people doing it, particularly children, the better. In terms of the most recent figures, the downturn we do assume is largely down to the not having the prisons services anymore. But you do correctly reference that kind of broader downturn that has been experienced nationally as well. I think it's just really important that we promote the service as much as we can, and that's what we're looking to do through initiatives such as the Year of Reading. We also, within our library service central team, have a children's librarian and someone to very much focus on school readiness and reading skills of young children, and they work very closely with our CYP, Children and Young People teams here as well. So we're very much looking to embed that love of reading as early as we can. And Crystal, I'm sure you have some specific information as well.
Absolutely, and it's always good to hear of another fellow bibliophile. I think it's really important to note that when it comes to the core of what libraries are, you're absolutely right, reading is part of our bread and butter, but we're also a little bit bigger than that. We're a library, a reading, and also an information service. We are the core information service for the county, and if anything, some of our data is showing people are coming more and more to us for that data, because we are a welcoming space and we can help people synthesise that data in a friendly way, if you see what I mean. So Molly has picked up on quite a few things that we're doing. We have the Year of Reading, we have our children's librarian who's working really closely with schools, working really closely with our CYP colleagues on school readiness, but also the home learning environment, because I think you've picked up a really important point that systemically we have an issue in this country with reading and literacy levels, and so that's seen across the whole country, not just in Suffolk. And so we work with a range of partners. As you know, we've got the National Literacy Trust Hub in Lowestoft, and they also work with us across the county more broadly. We work with the Reading Agency, we work with Book Trust. There's a whole host of partners on the ground, boots on the ground in Suffolk, working to address this issue, and including school libraries. I started out as a school librarian, I have to say, so I very much agree with you.
And I think on that kind of more medium-term transformation piece, there is that bit that libraries are one of our last bastions in place in a community. So actually, we've been focusing on getting the service in, making sure we're delivering its core service. But actually, the next phase is then about how we work with our colleagues in adult social care, in children's, about also as that point of having people that, one, know their community, but two, also can help people navigate, can help where people might be digitally excluded. So the library service has and always has adapted and changed. And also, just a final positive point, although the physical loans have dropped, the digital stuff is increasing, so it may be that we are seeing a shift also to some people using other devices, although I can also understand it's just nice to have a book in your hand sometimes other than a device. So I think national trends, but actually the digital is increasing. But I think there's definitely this piece we're looking at as the wider transformation programme about the role of libraries to support our residents, especially those who struggle with our digital processes and other things that need people that would be able to talk them through that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just to come back before any of you asked, my own vast private library, unfortunately you can't have it. I've already promised that in my will to my old school, Northgate in Ipswich. Thank you.
I think we're pleased to hear. We're pleased to hear that. Okay. Yeah, I think in schools, World Book Day, I mean, that seems to be celebrated quite largely. My granddaughter went last week dressed as a donut. I don't know what sort of relevance that was, but it does fire the imagination of young people, I think, doesn't it? So that's pretty good stuff. Okay, I've got 3 or 4 more speakers. Councillor Harsant next, and then Councillor Mummery.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it me or? Oh, right. That's right. Can I just ask, Molly, you mentioned the overspend, and you said a lot of it was down to business rate increase, and then relief staff. And I wondered why you had to go down that route of relief staff when you told us that the staff are doing so well and there's been no loss of staff or any great signs of sickness. And just also, you talk about the prison libraries. Was that a national stoppage, or was that something that Suffolk chose to do themselves?
Thank you. So, in terms of relief staff, when the service came in, as I'm sure, again, you'll recall, it was very quick. So we, as part of our commitment to keep everything going and business as usual, we went with what we inherited. So the relief staff was an anticipated cost. It was very much how the previous provider had staffed their library, and we have continued to do so. It's a very effective way of making sure that there's enough of the right staff in the right libraries. We have continued to use that model. I think maybe the term relief staff can sometimes be a little misleading, but they very much are integral to the service, or have been. What we would like to do in the longer term is to look at how we manage that going forward. And in terms of the prison services, so when we took the service back in-house, we made a deliberate decision very much to focus on the core service, library service provision, as that's our statutory duty. It wasn't a national decision at all, but it's something we took locally, but felt very much in the best interests of our statutory service provision.
So could I come back, Jake? So what actually happens to the prison service now? Does it have any facilities?
So, I was going to say somebody else might have to answer that one, sorry.
I'm happy to answer that, Councillor Harsant, because I was the person who looked after our 13 prison libraries. So again, they are a statutory service as well. And so they're led by education providers, which is commissioned by the Ministry of Justice. So they've just spun back in-house basically to the education providers, and the staff were TUPE'd across as well. So again, it should be for the prison community, no loss of service.
And I think also just on the piece around the relief staff, obviously, as I said, we've gone from very quickly bringing the service in-house and needing to focus on making sure we protected the frontline services as the administration has committed to doing. And so that phase bit has been that kind of safe and legal on day one type thing, and then we've then been focusing on the central team and the changes in the management around that. And then obviously moving on then it's then looking at how do we work with our frontline. And I think some of the bits that are already being done is looking at actually having posts that are more flexible, working across more areas to be able to do that, because clearly it's an operational service, which means that we have times when people are off sick or unwell, and we then need to have that coverage. So I think that will continue on our journey around that, but I think like most things, we just still need to do that next stage to look at how best to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got Councillor Mummery, followed by Councillor Welham.
And it is paramount that we keep libraries functioning in our country. My 6-month-old granddaughter is a member, and my daughter takes, I think, every fortnight to change her books. Just a few questions. So, what has been the feedback of those volunteering within our libraries? When will the mobile vans be replaced as promised? And lastly, Lowestoft Library is adjacent to the High Street, which is really a crime waiting to happen. The amount of problems we've got in our high streets, and when I've been to, because there's meeting rooms there, and which I've attended, you do seem to get people congregate there and cause problems. So I was wondering how many reports of crime has been reported. Obviously, I asked this for you all, but obviously in Lowestoft and other areas. And has there been any acts of violence to the volunteers? Are the staff safe? Because that is quite horrific around there, especially with drugs and stuff. And I just feel that it's a very unsavoury area where our library is. And adjacent to the library, there's an old people's day centre. So we must be mindful. People running through on bikes, and going through and stealing, shoplifting, they will come straight through there, because that is a causeway to get back into the area that they live in. So, lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Am I right in saying the Lowestoft Library has been closed for a bit of time, hasn't it? Is it?
I think that's reopened.
That's reopened now.
I think it has now.
Okay.
But,
great.
yeah. Well, hopefully it has.
Yeah, okay.
If not, I'm going to have a look and see why it's not open.
Okay. Well, we might get an answer to that now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There's been a big issue with the toilets. No, I don't know. I campaign for toilets in the high street. So obviously there aren't any in the high street. So consequently, people were using the toilets in the library and they are disgusting. So I just wondered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wonder if Nigel might be willing to give his perspective, first of all, about the volunteers and the experience.
I can only, of course, speak on a very micro level because obviously the volunteers are attached to the individual libraries and they are very attached to it. I was going through the process with them as the transition was happening before, and I actually spoke to our library volunteers, both the ones who work in the library and the ones for events, and also members of the Friends group, and they really just wanted business as usual. In other words, they wanted no real change to what they did, and I didn't find a single volunteer connected with Halesworth who was feeling that they were left out or wanted to stop providing the volunteering. So it was very reassuring, and I suspect that that's true across. I mean, because the numbers that we've heard would seem to confirm that, and I think a very impressive part of it was the staff during the transition, in my observation, which is slightly wider than just the library I'm involved in. Given that they had a lot of personal concerns about their future and what was going on, and of course communication was difficult because it was all in this 52-day window, the staff supported the volunteers, and I think the volunteers supported the staff, and I was impressed that the staff, despite their own issues that they might have had, actually just wanted to make sure that the volunteers and the users and the friends could really carry on. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, so obviously without volunteers, the council might have not had such a smooth transaction so volunteering is important. Thank you, Nigel.
We absolutely recognise how important volunteers are, not only for supporting the library service, but just broadly the benefits that volunteering brings. So we're very keen to encourage that across the council as well. So it very much played into everything which is very valuable and valued in the county council. Touching on your point around the mobile vans, so the vehicles are on the road and they continue on their various stops. We are looking at the outreach model more broadly, trying to recognise sort of where some of the opportunities will be. You will have seen in the evidence pack we mentioned the review, and that's part of that wider review where we're looking at various elements of the library service. So there should be more on that in due course. And in terms of Lowestoft, I think you've already picked up on some of the issues. It is a library that unfortunately does experience a high proportion of incidents. For me, staff safety is absolutely paramount and so important. I think, unfortunately, it is one of the elements of being a frontline service, very much. These are some of the difficulties that, staff do experience, but we very much try and provide the training and the resources to support them and keep them as safe as we can. But I will ask Crystal around some of the details around Lowestoft. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. So Lowestoft, it is a town, but it's a town with a lot of heart. I feel like sorry, my microphone went off. It's a town that gets a bit of a bad rap, really, despite the amazing services and the amazing library we have in that town. So you asked a question about crimes and how many we record. So we do record everything. We record through our antisocial behaviour policy and procedures, and staff are very good at recording everything for us. So we have a really clear and accurate record of what is happening. That is not the only way they record. They can go straight to the police. They can dial 3-9s if things get too difficult. We're always on the end of the phone, and we're just trying to be really responsive and agile where we can be, because it feels like issues in some towns across Suffolk are getting worse. They are. That's a reality. And like Molly said, we're a front-facing service, and so naturally...
Have been recorded?
If I had my laptop...
Oh, you would. All right, so is that in the public domain to see that? And are we working with the police? Because there used to be a gentleman that was a security guard that manned that whole area, and he's been made redundant.
No, that's not quite what happened. So because things became incredibly acute before Christmas with the antisocial behaviour,
Yes.
for the safety of staff, we commissioned some security through our partners Veritas to help us through that period.
So what is that security? What is there a person there?
There was, that we
Oh, was,
commissioned for
yeah.
a very short period of time to get us through a very difficult
Yeah.
period, and then what we did, we had a phased withdrawal of that security because things started to get better. But again, it's about our ongoing dialogue with staff, and if it looks like anything is getting worse
So
again,
that person works. If things were getting better when we had the person there, things got better with the crime.
it did. It seemed
Oh,
to deter
good.
people.
Oh,
it
that's
was
good.
it was a really good deterrent, and it bolstered staff confidence
Yeah,
to
that's
come to
what I
work.
mean. And volunteers.
And volunteers.
And the old people that are in the
Our
in the
customers.
day centre, and lots of children and mums. I mean, some of the stuff they might see, children can see.
People, we're here to ask questions, not to have a debate individually. But I mean, if you yeah, that's all right. If you can just listen to the answer, and I'll come back to you if you want to come back on any of them. But thank you.
Sorry, could I just add one last point to that as well? So we have updated library bylaws, and within that, and that's really to reflect the kind of the modern world now, and within that there is support for staff and volunteers and the expectations for behaviour in libraries to support staff, and those bylaws will be just going through our senior leadership approval process at the moment. Sure.
So, okay, all your questions answered? Yeah, good, thank you. Right, we've got Councillor Welham next, and then Councillor Scarff.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I've got some sort of comments on what residents have told me and what staff have told me, but they're all to do with Mid-Suffolk. I haven't gone outside of Mid-Suffolk or been told about anything outside of Mid-Suffolk. So some are perhaps relevant more widely, others aren't. But my first question is about the transition fund, and you talked about website and so on. Did that £1.8 million cover any rebranding? That I know you did it over a period of time. Did it cover rebranding and all of those associated costs? Were there any costs that were covered from corporate funds, such as were the redundancies and any early retirements covered from that 1.8 million? So that's one question. And the other question is, residents have had some sort of fears, some comments, some good, some not so good, some fairly trivial. But generally speaking, people I've talked to, staff and customers, have said that the handover was pretty seamless. They didn't really notice the difference. Obviously, staff noticed the difference, but they didn't feel any better or any worse as a before and after, which was good. And you've had some sort of surveys done, but do we know why people don't use libraries? Is there something that we can do? I mean, we are a household who's split. I love libraries, and my wife loves the library, but never borrows books because she likes to have it and hand it on to somebody else. So she would never show up as somebody who reads or uses the library but she does go, and we both go to various events. So it would be useful to know why some people, why do some people use the libraries but not borrow books? And an example is they like to hold it in their hand and pass it on to somebody else. But we use the library for all sorts of things, like out-of-hours activities, quizzes and things like that. Are those figures, the out-of-hours activities, are they included in your statistics? I mean, in Stonemarket, for instance, they're run by an ex-live. Is this news to you?
No, it's not. I can answer that, Councillor Welham, if you'd like. For the majority, if our libraries are used out of hours, we don't include them in our stats because they are very much self-contained and self-run. And it feels a little bit disingenuous to try and massage our figures in that way, but we are really keen to put that in our narrative that we are well used outside of hours, if that makes sense.
Our quiz team, most people would probably never go to the library except for the quiz. Now, one fairly trivial thing which I've been asked to raise, and that is, why did you take the newspapers away? And the person who asked that question, fair play to him, he now buys a newspaper and takes it in after lunch. But that then raises the problem. He can walk in, he buys the Eye, and he reads it in there, he leaves it on the table. But how do you control what people might leave behind for others to read? It could be anything.
May I answer that? So the newspapers were taken away, as you put it. That was prior to transfer. That wasn't a decision taken by Suffolk County Council. That was us when we worked within the charity. And unfortunately, with all of these services, sometimes we have to make really tough decisions about what we have. And newspapers, I'm afraid to say, are incredibly expensive to have daily. So we worked with our friends groups to see if they could provide one daily local paper, because again, we come down to a bit of a sticky wicket. If we're allowing people to pay for one newspaper, do we have a bias of news going on? So we had to put some really strict guidelines around that. In an ideal world, I'd have newspapers, I'd have magazines, but our book budget only goes so far when we've got rates of inflation increasing on those services. But I would also like to point out that we have Press Reader, which is our online press catalogue, and the rates of access of that is exponential growth. So it is there still, just in a different format.
My real concern is about people might come in and put all sorts of stuff and leave it on the table. Does somebody sweep around from time to time to make sure
Absolutely.
Stuff that I wouldn't want people to read is available?
It's not just newspapers, Councillor Welham. We have to be alert to all kinds of materials being left in our libraries, and our staff are very savvy and very alert to that and will make in-the-moment decisions about what to do.
A couple of other comments that I've heard are staff don't at the time of the changeover, probably less so now, staff don't seem to be quite so relaxed about helping. There seem to be fewer staff available to give sort of fairly general advice. I don't know if that's come through.
I don't think it should be the case, because our staff levels have maintained. We've had no frontline redundancies, and the ethos and expectations of my colleagues on the front line has remained the same throughout, because our driving motivation was no change for the customer.
I think there was perhaps a bit of tension in the first few weeks after handover, and people tend, if they're using a service, they tend to remember some of the bad things or the bad experiences rather than the good experiences.
And just on that point about staff, just to give assurance, so as a leadership team, we have a process within Suffolk County Council around what are called ECFs. That's all the new jobs that are coming through and where people are leaving and new hires. And I don't recall us saying no to any of those library roles coming through. So it's been very clear during a period of transition that we're not in a place we need to keep the wheels on the show. So just to give it from a leadership perspective, there hasn't been any no's against any of the recruitment for frontline staff.
And other staff hours pretty much the same. The other fear is, it's going to be automated. It will be ever so efficient. It will be automated. You won't need anybody there. You can just dial up which book you want. Like getting something from Amazon. You go to the box at the garage and.
Councillor Welham, can I just say that's, as far as I'm concerned, that will never happen, because what the magic of libraries is the people. It's that human connection. It's about tackling loneliness. It's about creating social connection. Just being together. It sounds a bit trite, but sometimes people call us the community's living room. And I think it's really important that we have those staff there, that friendly face who can front that for us. As far as, in my lifetime, I can't see it being fully automated.
I think the people who are raising that are the ones who see it just as you see it, that it's a community room, and they fear that it could be a community room with robots almost, but that's certainly not. So there's just the one question that's still outstanding about where the costs of redundancies and early retirements and early taken pensions and so on came from.
So I can answer that, Councillor Welham. Yes, all of those costs were included in the transition fund.
as you've picked an area that you represent, I'm going to talk about where I live and talk about the library. I go to library for activities, but I get my book from Brantford Library, which is an old bus stop, and it's packed full of library books, which I swap, and others do that in the village. Now, I don't know how many there are all over the country, but there are telephone boxes with books in, there are all sorts going on, and they're very, very sweet, and perhaps I should go to the main library, but it's really convenient. I go for a walk, and I pick up another book. So, you know, there's lots. I think it's quite complex as to why reading goes down. Another thing is Kindle. I do a mixture. I have some on, you know, Kindle, and I know other people who do that. So, but I love a book. I'm like Stuart, I love to feel a book. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, about how many actually use the library for reading. But I do go to events, and they're great.
One other question I asked, do we know why people don't use libraries? Do you survey that at all?
So we do have a needs assessment around library use, and I can send that to you, which provides some information about that, because that was looked at in quite some detail a couple of years ago. But Crystal, you probably have some further information as well.
Absolutely. So when when I was in the charity, we undertook some research only a couple of years ago with the Audience Agency, which are a national body that look at this kind of thing about why people don't use libraries. And there was myriad outcomes for that. And so we use that to try and shape our events and activities alongside that needs assessment that was undertaken by Suffolk County Council. Moving forward, I have created a customer experience framework, and I'm working with colleagues from across the council on this, and one of the big strands is non-users. And so just to give you one example, we would like to run some forums with non-users to really get under the skin of what's going on, and potentially even vox pop surveys on high streets to find out, because you're right, it's really important to know why not, as well as the good news.
Okay, thank you very much. If you send anything, would you send it to Catherine? She could send it to the whole committee then, rather than an individual. Great, thank you. I've got Councillor Scarff and Councillor Goldsmith.
Thank you, Chair. Really a series of questions regarding sort of the management of future budgets, as it were. How in future years will you manage to mitigate the considerable cost of rates? Because obviously we now pay rates and the charity before didn't, and that was 400,000. Was the extra cost of migrating staff to the Suffolk County Council terms and conditions from April included within the transition cost, and what effect does that actually have on ongoing budgets in future years? Because obviously that will have some kind of effect. And when will the service be performing without the flexibility to draw down on transitional costs, please?
I'll have a go at this one. So I think I'd go back to my original point to recognise we've done the service, the staff and that have done an incredible job in a very short period of time to move the service into the county council, which means we're not yet at a point of fully understanding the cost of the service. So it's a bit like when you buy a new house, you don't actually know what the cost is going to cost to heat it over the winter. We've only had the service and financial data for the last 9 months. So I think we're going through a period of change. We've done quite a lot in that period of time, and we've started doing some of the changes to the central services where we've realised some savings from that, which starts to offset some of the cost of the business rates. So I think what I would say is that we know that there will still be some pressures next year, and we're looking at how we mitigate them down. And there's a number of different avenues to look at for that we haven't got to yet with the part of that process. Whether that's looking at the cost of moving books around the county is one of the areas. We spend a lot of money on couriers moving books around, about how can we do that in a more efficient way. Also looking at, again, as you would expect, and the service has already been doing, around income generation from the use of the resources and working with local communities, the fantastic assets we have. Also looking at other forms of income to come in to support the service in a sustainable way. So whether that's us using our grants flexibly within public health and communities to support that, delivering work through the libraries, but also in the medium term working with adult social care and children's to actually look at how that can be more of a front door. As we look to do our development around a digital front door more, we're going to need something in place around that. So I think it's going to take at least another year to get into a place where we really truly understand the cost of the service. But as Molly had in her slides, we've got other funding we can use to mitigate any of those costs and ensure that we continue to deliver that frontline service that I think you all agreed that we need to do around that. So I think it's going to be a progress piece. We're not there yet. We're still going to need to do some more work, but we'll be looking at other efficiencies to build in to support that.
Thank you, Joe. Just a final question then. It's my understanding that all of the libraries, bar one, have a friends group, but are they all actually active at the moment? Are any friends group in name only? Because it sounds a really good success story, but do we have any problems with any of the friends groups not really being that active?
That's a very good question. I would say people are involved at a friends group level to a greater or lesser degree. It is a spectrum of what we see. We have some people who are incredibly involved, and there are one or two friends groups. I wouldn't say they're in name only, but I would say that activity is not as strong as others. Now, the important thing is that we have a structure and system in place with support mechanisms through my colleagues to help the manager stimulate that friends group, because with anything, you know, some things just drop off a little bit if it doesn't have that continual support ongoing. So it's kind of, they're in natural cycles, is how I would put it.
Okay. I just wondered, Mr. Frosterick, could you give us a feel of how active your friends are in Halesworth? How active are you?
Yes, Chairman. I think we're very active because obviously I feel very active. I spend a lot of time, as do a lot of my colleagues, on library business and events. We're particularly keen to pick up on what the library service can't provide. I mean, for example, last Thursday, World Book Day, we had an event because our library is actually closed on Thursdays, which is unfortunate because obviously World Book Day always falls on a Thursday. So it does mean that we had a Friends event, but it was actually also supported by staff, where children would come in and collect their books in conjunction with the local bookshop. So there's a significant footfall there, which won't be recorded. Lots of children in interesting costumes. So that's an example, but I think our group is active. We try to put on events. I think the main thing that I tend to concentrate on is trying to put on events that the staff can lead comfortably without putting extra burdens on them, so we can give them funding so they can offer something free of cost, and to try to outreach to the wider community, because we don't really want to be running a library for the, should we call them, the usual suspects. Is that helpful, Chairman?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you do. I think we're all very conscious of the valuable work that all the Friends groups do to support our libraries. I'm going to move on to the next question now, which is Councillor Goldsmith.
Thank you, Chair. I did have three questions, but the other two have been adequately answered. One was about the prison service, the other one was the mobile libraries, but you've answered those to my satisfaction. Well, I do have a question on the surveys for the volunteers. Do we have a forward date for the next survey? And do we have any previous records from the previous user?
Thank you, Councillor Goldsmith. So there's been one previous volunteer survey. We can provide the results of that. The intention going forward is that we would do a survey every 3 years, and we've got to plan when that is, unless you know, Crystal, when that's scheduled.
I don't know when it's scheduled, but it is coming. It's in motion.
In the works.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bennett, then Councillor Reader.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd just like to apologise for my late arrival. I was a late train from Felixstowe. It's usually very good. It was just a few minutes late. Usually very reliable. So I had a couple of questions. The longer-term plan, how is that going to be put together? What's going to be your process for getting a feel for what are the priorities in the community, among the volunteers, etc.? What's the process of that? And does it, from the council's point of view, is it going to include a commitment to keep the 45 open, to keep that going? There's also in the report about the constitutions, that the libraries were supported to change their constitutions. What has changed in the constitutions? And as part of that, perhaps, are there any grant pots, any sources of funding that were available to the CIC that maybe are not available in the new scenario? I used to work in volunteer management. It's a tricky thing, volunteer management. In fact, it's much trickier than regular HR, I think, because you don't have the carrot or stick of salary to motivate people. So I've been encouraged by what I've read and what I've heard about how you value your volunteers, how the numbers seem to be holding up. But one area that I've seen can affect volunteer engagement is if things become overly bureaucratic. One of the things people like about volunteering is that it's flexible and you don't have all the grief and red tape that you do in a regular job. And has the moving, and I have seen in another context actually on the district council, a group of volunteers who were suddenly kind of inundated with new requirements to sign agreements, to take training, new training, etc., which made it all quite onerous, and which seems fine to a council, but if you're in the volunteer sector, that's what you kind of want to get away from. And I'd just like some reassurance that you're not having to get too heavy on that side of things because it's a council kind of thing. For example, you talk about signing a volunteer agreement. Was a volunteer agreement previously in place? And was it the same? Yeah, I mean, probably is. I'm fairly sure this is all okay, but I do want to ask. And then, interesting point from Councillor Bird about the school libraries. And I'm pretty sure that, and the reduction in the number of schools with libraries, with their own libraries. I'm pretty sure Felixstowe School, the high school, doesn't any longer have a library. And I just wondered, I couldn't see in your plans your engagement with schools and in places where the school or schools don't have their own libraries. Are there special efforts being made to engage with, bring them in? Perhaps certain classes could come in and get a feel for a library. I mean, this may all be happening, I don't know. Because in terms of not using libraries, I think you've probably got a cluster of users who are your grandchildren's age, and that sort of, then there's us lot, and there's a chunk in the middle of younger people who are increasingly not engaged, and perhaps getting them involved at high school age and knowing where they are, what they do, all the interesting things they can do might be a way to generate long-term engagement.
I was just going to say, do you want to, I'm worried we're going to forget it. So I'm just going to come in first, and I'm going to do this from an officer perspective. That clearly we all know what's going to be happening in May. So from a commitment for the future direction of libraries, I'm going to sit here and say we've got the election, we've got our current commitments around it, and then we will then, from an office perspective, need to be guided by the new administration on what the commitments are around the library. So I will do that from an officer perspective around that. I think just picking up on the grants pots piece, like most things, is kind of a shift of the voluntary sector may be able to access some pots, but then we can also sometimes access other pots that the voluntary sector can't. But I think also it's fair to say that we're still managing to access other funds that are focused particularly on libraries, and that doesn't limit us because we're a county council. And so for me as Director of Public Health, and as Molly's passionate commitment to libraries being a core part of actually helping people's health and well-being, we are looking at what we can do from that perspective as well. So I think it's kind of, some things maybe reduce, other things maybe other opportunities around that. But I think we are a very savvy team that will look at every opportunity around that. But also a balancing act, because sometimes I think you can spend a lot of money trying to get relatively small pots of money sometimes, and actually what we're trying to do is to be quite strategic around some of that as well and be able to leverage in some of those bits as well. So I've probably picked the two easy bits to answer.
I'm just going to, if I can just back up on the 45 library sites. Officer perspective, cabinet member perspective, absolutely 100% want to keep the 45. What we can't cater for is what is going to happen after the elections and the unitary. Other parties might have different ideas about the value of libraries, but certainly my party absolutely gets it with libraries. So you'd have my reassurance if I was still in place. Thank you.
I'll pick up a few, and then I'm sure we'll have some other comments as well. So initially, around the longer term plans, there's kind of two strands to how we're going about this. So we mentioned in the paper around the review, that's around looking at some longer term operational elements of the library going forward, and there's some details in the paper about that. And I also mentioned the strategy. So that's trying to set the vision for the service going forward. So those two strands hopefully will start to set that out and make that real. In terms of the bylaw changes, I will ask a much greater expert than me about what it was and what it's turning into, but there are some significant changes which I think reflect the changes in our society and how the bylaw should, mention those. It's already been picked out about grants. I think it's very key that we are looking at larger ones, and we're trying to do so in a strategic way. Applying for grants is quite a labour-intensive business, and so therefore we want to be really clear about what we're going for and why. And we're trying to be strategic in our approach to, so for example, if we're looking at the condition of the buildings, the service, really trying to link that all together so that we have that sort of forward progression, I think, as a whole. In terms of the volunteer management, I absolutely hear what you're saying about that bureaucracy. That can be really challenging, and we really want to ensure that people spend their time doing what they signed up to do, which is being the volunteer. Crystal's already mentioned we have some members of staff within our library's staff structure who absolutely what they do is support the volunteers and the friends groups, and I think that's really important to providing that kind of point of contact to help people. We do have to balance that to make sure that the volunteers are safe and the friends are safe. So again, just want to make sure that everyone's doing what they want to do, but in a safe environment where they've had the appropriate training, which is needed, but hopefully that's never too much. And in terms of school and library engagement, I think we've touched on that a little bit, but again, I think there's probably more that Crystal will be able to say on that.
And just on the strategy piece, need to remember that obviously when we went through the process, we did a very detailed needs assessment and co-production activity with it. So we've got a good baseline of what people have told us. There's always more we can be doing. So we've not got a blank slate. We've got what the service did before, and we've got that. So that gives us a good bedrock as well.
And excitingly, we do have the next customer survey coming out next month as well, which does provide that really valuable insight alongside what I was saying about our non-users as well. So to pick up on some of the school stuff first of what you said, absolutely, we're seeing schools without school libraries, but there is a national programme that we are part of with the National Literacy Trust. We're very much supporting them around getting those libraries back in schools at the moment. Of course, it's all dependent on school engagement, who are willing to engage with it, and the funding that is available, but there is a national shift towards this because school libraries are not a statutory provision, sadly. So what we do in this area, we do lots of working directly with the schools, and that's not just primaries, it's a very important part of what we do, but also working with those staff who work in high schools as well. So there's a big strand of youth engagement and outreach that we do. We're about to run some young people's hackathons in libraries and all kinds of fun things for them to tell us what they want in their libraries and for them to feel engaged, essentially. And like I said, we also have school visits. That is a core part of our offer, and if I saw a library that wasn't offering school primary visits, I'd be very worried actually, because the children love it, and it also helps those teachers really understand around reading as well, because they have so much to keep in their heads. We are an enabling function in that way. You also asked about the bylaws. Can you remind me of the specific question? Yeah, I thought you asked about the bylaws.
Bylaws.
Oh, the changes to the bylaws that are coming, was that? Oh, sorry, was it the Constitution? Sorry, I wrote down bylaws here. So the Friends Group Constitution. So they had to change on a very practical level because the Friends Groups were the membership body for the charity. And obviously they're not part of, they've moved over from the charity to Suffolk County Council. So on a practical level, they just had to change. And for all intents and purposes, I am looking to my colleague here, that was more of a paper exercise, and we helped and enabled friend groups through that.
Chair.
Hand over.
Mr. Chairman, can I just confirm the position? There were two types of friends groups, all charities. Some of them were run by individual trustees, and others are charitable incorporated organisations. And I think it was the first set of groups that needed to adapt their constitutions, because the CIOs have rather broader association, charity commission constitutions in place, which just need a little bit of tweaking, I think, in our case, if we're fairly typical. But the main objectives were not linked to the former provider.
Okay, thank you for that.
I just had a...
Is it okay? Do you want to come back on anything?
Just briefly, Chair. The people who are managing the volunteers, Molly, you mentioned you had a team of people. Are they people from that sort of management background who are experienced and trained in volunteer management? I guess they are. I just wanted to check.
They are. They're actually the people that transferred over from Suffolk Libraries, and when we went through the restructure, they were reconfirmed in post.
And thank you. And just on the schools, in Felixstowe, it's the secondary. We only have one secondary school, and it doesn't have a library anymore. It was more about this sort of secondary age that I was thinking about, a bit more than the primaries.
Absolutely. It is harder in many ways to work with secondary schools because of what they have to get done with their pupils. But it doesn't mean that we don't try. We always reach out through we have our children's librarian, Erin. She's always reaching out to schools. She's got really good networks with the English teachers, with literacy leads, things like that, just to offer help and support. And we run all kinds of twilight sessions for staff as well to encourage. Of course, you know, there's always that underlying message from us around making sure they have some kind of library provision, but again, that's dependent on what the school sees as a priority, but we will keep pushing that.
Okay, thank you. Because to me, it's the parents have an important role as well, don't they, to encourage their children. It can't all be the libraries or the county council. It's parents must take responsibility to encourage their children to, you know, start to read and read books. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but I think that's... Yes, absolutely. Yes, okay. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Reid and then Councillor Bridgeman.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much indeed for the report. Really comprehensive, and, you know, reading it, I think you can get a full picture of how you've managed to transition, and well done for those people who've done it. So, a couple of things, and before I get on to my question, just Councillor Mummery was saying about Lowestoft, and as it's in my division, and I'm very proud of Lowestoft. Yes, we had some quite a lot of difficulties as being related, but I think it was a coming together of various organisations that have now managed to tackle the situation, and I did feel for the library staff and around that area, but thank you for helping with others to sort it, and security did help, and within the Britain Centre they put their own security in. So just that point. The point I'd like to kind of explore is the governance of the new organisation, because as we know just from history, it is about openness and transparency and being able to see it in the public and everybody to see it. So on page 17, paragraph 13, you say Strategic Governance Board. Now, when I kind of see Governance Board, it conjures some things in my mind. There is not only just people who are involved in the board, in other words, operational, this is more looking at it and outside perhaps organisations being part of that board to be able to monitor the situation. So when you then look at page 20, yes, let me just make sure I've got the right page. No, I think it is page 20. No, the appendix. I did write it on here, but page 31, I think. No, it's not. Apologies. It is page 38, which is your governance structure. I don't see the word Strategic Governance Board on there.
So, yeah, in the appendices, it's the kind of the mid-blue one.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
It's the biggest one.
Yeah, bang in the middle.
Yeah, but it says, does it actually say?
Strategic group.
So they're the one and the same?
Yes.
Right.
Sorry if the terminology got a bit confused.
No, well, that's fine. So that's really good, because now that gives me the opportunity to explain what I'm trying to ask the question. So it doesn't seem that there is any outside, either other members of this organisation, other than Cabinet member, obviously, who's daily looking at this, undoubtedly. There's no other structure to look at it other than those people who are already involved in it. Now, you have relied, and quite rightly so, to use the Scrutiny Committee to look at how you've done. Now, Scrutiny Committees, only how many times do we meet? 6 times? 6 times a year? So the next time that the libraries could actually come onto the scrutiny is going to be at least 18 months, 2 years' time. So would you agree with me that there needs to be some sort of structure other than what you've got, that we can have outside eyes looking at it?
So, of course.
So I think, Joan, sorry, Councillor Reader. I think the question for me is, how does libraries compare to many other things that we do within Suffolk County Council? So I think, first of all, I would say is that we have a quarterly performance report, which is reviewed every quarter by JLT and goes into the public as well, which has some of the key library stats within that, which includes particularly borrowing rates and information around that. Now, obviously, we've got a cabinet member system here, so Councillor Cenci is fully briefed on that. And I suppose for me is other services, we don't have a separate group or board or external necessarily challenging all this. So I think for me when is that needed and when isn't that? Well, I know where it's placing in other places, it's because they're on an improvement journey and stuff like that. So I think for me, I think there is a question that clearly Scrutiny has a role to play, but as a cabinet lead, we've got input and we've got the performance bit. I suppose for me should that be enough like other services within the county council?
Great answer, if I may say, and you've absolutely nailed it, where there is actually other challenges that the council have. Send Improvement Board has got an independent chair who looks at it and works with it. So from your answer, and I do accept it, please don't think I don't, is that you feel that you're adequately covered in that area, where other people could challenge that there is not enough public-facing part of it. You've said some of the reports are in the public domain, but I'm just questioning whether at this point in time it would have been useful to have as these other improvement boards, as you've mentioned. But I'll leave that there. But developing that further, and for example, in your page 23, paragraph 53, where we've got these numbers that have already been mentioned today, where 452,000 against 480,000. And I do accept that you've only been operating within the council for the last 10 months. But could I please really implore, when we do have figures, that we can actually see a trend over a period of time? And I know it was from the previous operation, so you may not have access to them. But whenever we're given figures, we need a trend. We need it over a period of time, because we had the question from Councillor Bird. It's just a point in time, and when you've got a 30,000 reduction, it could be many things. You need to see it over a particular trend. So going forward, may I please, and perhaps a recommendation, Chair, if it's accepted, that there is, wherever it is, that the public can see where there is trend data. And you'll most probably say from the quarterly report, you could actually see it, but I think those could be developed.
Councillor Reader, can I just come in there before you ask your next bit? I just want to clarify what you mean so that we all take away the same thing, because on the next page it shows a trend. Now, it's got both. It's got the physical and the digital issues. Are you asking for that to be separated out and have lots of different trend boxes?
What I am asking is for a lot of trend boxes, really, because, thank you, Molly, if I may, you're agreeing that that is something that is really, for a board or any scrutiny to look at it, is to be able to have that information.
So I absolutely accept that, Councillor Reader. I will take blame. So this is my first report writing for Scrutiny. And sometimes it's a bit of balance about how much information you put in and, you know, which is the relevant information. So I put in the figures to give people a bit of a snapshot, but then also the trend graph overall. If you would like individual trend graphs for those individual elements, we can absolutely provide that. They are covered in the strategic groups quarterly.
Thank you very much. And it's only because I'm such a nerd on the data, as everybody knows, but I really think they're so powerful that by looking at it, you can immediately see where you've got it. Where you look, just 30,000 gone, and I do accept that you've got that graph on there. So, and this is where I think there's, you know, it is absolutely paramount for transparency and for public to be able to see it. So if we take the prison service, as we've already heard, I would imagine the prison service was taken out, and you will answer whether this was the case, is because the amount of money that was being received to deliver that service was not sufficient enough to cover this. Right, okay. We'll answer that in a minute. But we have no opportunity of actually seeing when budgets go up and down quite what they're for, because as soon as you take the prison service out of the system, there's going to be a huge fluctuation on the income and expenditure, and that needs to be able to be transparent and people to be able to see it. Otherwise, they will make their own interpretations of that.
So I'm just going to come back on the performance bit. So I'm quite happy to share the link. The public-facing performance report has got broken down by digital and physical loans. So general public and everybody can see that on a quarterly basis when that comes through as part of that quarterly performance piece. And we can take that off and share that with yourselves with that one. But I'll hand over to Crystal. Do you want to pick up on the...
Yes, you had a question about prison libraries and the income. And was it your suggestion that there wasn't enough money to cover it? Is that why?
Well, that's why I was thinking perhaps why you actually removed the prison service. But my point is more fundamental about showing figures to the public at a point when you reduce something. They need to know that the figure at the beginning of the year is different at the end of the year because of some consequence.
Yeah, no,
not just a figure, it's not got to be said why it is.
Yes, it requires narrative, and I completely take that on board, yeah.
To answer the first bit, is it because of money?
Yeah, no, to answer the first bit, it wasn't because the offer more than washed its own face, if you see what I mean. It wasn't because there wasn't enough money in the pot. There were lots of different reasons, and Molly has already outlined why prison libraries didn't come back across with us. So yeah, I'm happy to answer anything else.
And I suppose as an add-on as well, so the quarterly figures that have been referenced, you know, as well as a graph, you always need to explain the graph, so the narrative always goes along with that as well. I would say sometimes in our data, and I equally love numbers and I like to understand them, it's quite hard in our library management system sometimes to pick out, you know, is a physical loan due to this or that? So sometimes we can't be wholly specific, but that's the point of the narrative, to try and explain why the changes take place.
And just one more point, I'm sure that people using the library, it'd be very interesting to know what percentage of the population use the library, because the people using the library out of that 452,000 are most probably 2% of the population, because they are people using it multiple times rather than 452,000 separate people borrowing a book.
Yeah, and we know how many people in Suffolk have library cards, and we know how many people, go to physical borrowing and how many people use digital borrowing. As you said, there are probably some people that do both, and that probably covers the kind of changing way in which people are using library services.
Could I just, how many people have got a library card, do we know?
I know, I need to go back to my computer, hold on one second.
I mean, is it 2%, 5%, 52% of the population?
It was, from memory, it was 65,000 people.
That was 65,000
8%.
physical borrowers. And then I gave Molly earlier a figure for digital borrowers. But again, it comes down to that data quality. You get an overlap. So it's really hard sometimes to determine what an accurate figure is. But we do have proxies.
And then you've also got people, the footfall counter won't pick up on whether somebody's a member or not either. So as ever with these things, it's an imperfect science. And we can try and triangulate as much as possible, but we will never get a complete picture. And the more we try and ask people for details to come in and use the service, they may not want to come in anymore if they get asked, who are you, where are you from, what is this? Yeah.
Interesting question, how many 75 councillors have got library cards? We'll put that in the recommendation. Yes, okay. Okay, I've also got to have Councillor Bridgeman, but he has already asked a question, so I'm going to go to Councillor Wilson, who hasn't, and then I'll come back to Councillor Bridgeman, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. With bringing the libraries back in-house, does it allow for more sort of flexible implementation of sort of our strategies and our programmes? So I was thinking, we talked about this previously in the atrium about a month ago, was we do a lot for child literacy rates. I mean, look at Stoke Chart, they're fantastic for it. But my key issue is the adult illiteracy rates. And I'm wondering, now it's in-house, is there more we can do to provide funding or have sort of, not top-down, but have sort of an outline of sort of projects we'd like these libraries to run? Because, especially in areas like Chantry, you're seeing, especially with child it's combined literacy rate, because adult illiteracy and then them having kids, it tends to be generational literacy. So I'm wondering, now we're in-house, is something the council can do to provide more support sort of for projects like this?
So that's an area of work actually that we look at in public health and communities around sort of health literacy, but sort of literacy generally. Obviously, there are other colleagues across the council that also manage that, and I think it's a really important point that you raised there about that alignment of strategies. What often happens in my experience is so many teams across the council, we want the same outcomes, and so where we can bring all of those strategies together in, for example, the opportunity of having the libraries would be a really important win. And I think we do that, and I think there's more that we could do. As to your point around literacy specifically, I'm going to ask Crystal, because she probably knows some specifics.
Yes, you make a really good point. So we do quite a lot of broad stuff around what I would call reader development for adults at all different levels of ability. And of course, with adult illiteracy, there's a huge stigma attached to that, sadly, so people don't feel very confident, and it's always harder to learn something the older you get. And so what we do, we tend to rely much more on specialist organisations to come into our libraries. One really good example is Let's Talk Reading in Ipswich, which I'm a proud trustee of, and they do that kind of that hand-holding, that because it's not just about learning the building blocks of reading, it's about breaking down some of those barriers. So that is why we work more closely with those experts on the ground. But yeah, you're right, there's I think the thing about libraries is that we're always open to ideas, and we don't always get it right, and we don't always have it nailed on, and so we're really relying on all kinds of feedback from everyone. And if you have ideas, you've got my email.
And so with the now being council run, is it easier to get the specialists in or more difficult compared to how it was the charity, or is there sort of no difference? Just
I don't think there's any difference. I think people just see us as libraries, to be honest, especially the specialists on the ground. They can see us as a vehicle to get to people who really need their help, and you know, our doors have remained open all the way through, and they will do.
I suppose one thing I would add to that, though, is that we in the Public Health and Communities Directorate and our other directorates as well now have a direct line to the libraries to support that, and what Stuart was referencing earlier, that kind of co-location of ideas as well as strategies and maybe services as well in the future is sort of where we would want to get to. I also was reminded the year of reading, adult literacy is a strand of that as well. So again, there are opportunities to promote that, and we would really welcome support with that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm on now to the second round of questioning. Councillor Bridgeman first.
Thanks. I can only go by what I've looked into and the staff I've spoken to, but I have spoken to people at Broomhill, Ipswich Central and Stoke Library. And it's always going to be subjective, isn't it? But the vast majority I've spoke to actually feel more secure under community libraries, especially if they're neurodivergent, because there's bigger networks within Suffolk County Council than there was. What other ways are you talking to staff and getting their ideas for service development for the future?
So I can start the answer to that. So obviously during the transition period, it was very difficult. It was very important for us to communicate with staff, and we tried to do that. I'm sure there's always more we could have done, but that was in the forefront of our minds. We ran what we called sort of Hearts and Minds campaign, where we were really trying to, obviously there's a lot of technical stuff around these transition programs, but we really wanted to talk to staff directly. So we did a lot of that. Going forward, we will continue to do that. I've recently seen a new comms strategy that's been proposed, and we will enact that soon. And so I think that's sort of the key things we wanted to enact. Crystal, the view from the service as well.
Yeah, feedback is incredibly important. We're only as strong as our staff, essentially. There is a saying about the lowest paid members of any organisation are actually the most powerful with the soft power for us. So we have to listen to what is happening on the ground. And so we have both formal and informal structures for that. So to give you an example, we always have a rolling Teams chat with our managers, and that can range from the very mundane to actually, I've got this idea going on over here, has anyone tried that? And because we're now getting into the place of business as usual, our manager forums, our in-person manager forums are now coming back from next month, which is an absolutely brilliant way to bring these massive brains together in a room and for us to learn from and then ask questions and have that exchange of information. So to answer your question, it's both formal and informal, and again, we're just open to ideas.
And can I just add, for your benefit, I've been to libraries to have a look and talk to the staff. They're really passionate, really committed, staff really positive, and they want to think of different ideas and different events and bring different communities together as well. I'm so impressed with how hard they work, as well as the people in front of you. And so I hope that makes you feel that, they're always trying to come up with different ways of using the library.
Any changes as big as these were, for 2 or 3 months, let's be honest, it's going to be a bit of chaos, isn't it? But why wouldn't it be? Even I was a bit surprised with how quick the chaos seemed to slip away. And in particular, for then the customers to say, well, nothing's changed. Yeah. Well,
that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, could I just add one quick point? So within the library strategy as well, just to bring that full circle, we're very keen to bring together the views of staff and customers and volunteers as well into the development of that strategy. So that communication will continue.
Okay, good. I've got 4 more who are having a second bite of the cherry. And then I'm going to close this section down and have a 10-minute break. That's okay. So I've got Councillor Welham, Bennett, Mummery and Bird in that order. So Councillor Welham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a comment before I ask my question. And that is that I tend to use a library as somewhere I can go for an hour to actually get on with the work I really need to do as a councillor, because it is a place where you can carry out research, you can write. You're not alone, because I think I work better in a fairly quiet environment, but not a silent environment. And for a lot of people, and I often see students coming into Stowmarket Library as well, because they've got access to books, they've got access to the internet, and they've got access where they can actually work on their own. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that is the one most important aspect of the library. And I don't think that we could replicate that in other sort of office building. So I think that for me is very important. But I have got a question. Councillor Chenchy, you mentioned the county council elections and there might be a change. But as soon as we have one election, another one will come along, and another one, like London buses. We're going to have 3 in the space of about 2 years. How do you, as a service, feel about having to look ahead at the present time? You may get an answer on whether it's a 1 or 3 unitary within, well, it might even be before the next election, the county council election. And then the unitary elections may come up with something of a completely different complex just a year after that. Is this going, my question is this going to impact on the service that you can provide to the libraries?
Yeah, so
Bar have got to provide that statutory obligation unless that changes, I guess. So, but do you want to answer that?
No, it's not about who's going to do what afterwards. It's what are the challenges in the short term? Because you're going to have to devote, I guess, more time to planning for change than the people actually in the libraries. The libraries will be able to continue. I've got no problem about that. My concern is about the senior management team and what might be thrown at the senior management team over this period of change, and whether that's going to...
Have you...
So I suppose speaking as one of those in that cohort, absolutely it will be about providing business as usual across a range of services at the same time as we plan for change. Speaking in terms of the libraries, I've been thinking about that as I've been leading this transition going forward. And my principle has always been what we needed to do first of all was to understand the library service, because obviously Public Health and Communities never run it, Suffolk County Council hasn't run it for a long time. So very much what we focus on is understanding what is. Any changes that we have made to date have always been with an eye to hopefully not having to undo anything. But I have tried to do it in a very considered way going forward so that we take it step by step. And I will continue to do that while there is such considerable uncertainty.
If I may, is this likely to have an impact on the capital programme?
So I think the capital programme is very, very tight, full stop, as you would have sat there in the budget scrutiny. But I think around the libraries, there are obviously funds from SIL and other aspects that we can call down on. So, and that is where the majority of our investment, either that or grants for bigger changes, such as with, I suppose, Ipswich Library and stuff like that. So I think the key bit for me is this organisation will still be here until 2028. And actually, we as leaders and officers will work out how we keep the lights on and make sure we continue delivering to that very last day, because people are relying on our services. We will then work on this idea, as Molly kind of said, of no regret decisions. So what we can't do is stop everything now because of this. So we will continue to do what we need to for the service to get it in the best state, ready for whatever happens in the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I would want to try and aim for a 12 o'clock break, so if the next 3 questioners could be pretty succinct, that would be helpful. Councillor Welham, you had just been. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. The 65,000 cardholders sounds quite good to me, actually. That's 8.5%, I think. Interesting to know within that what this kind of diversity element is. Do you know how many from different non-white British communities are cardholders? I'll just a bit of a point. Actually, that was one aspect, but also how would that sort of membership compare to other counties? It sounds actually quite good to me, towards 10% of the population. But I do worry that there'd be chunks of the Suffolk community that would not be engaging, and I'd be interested to hear that and your own perspective on how you might address that. And then another area was just on AI. I'm sure there's lots of advantages for you and big challenges for you. I'm interested whether you have a policy or a thought on whether you're going to stock AI-generated publications. These exist, I think, and either digitally or physically, or perhaps are you going to flag to people what's real and what's less real? Yeah, those two areas.
So again, I'll start that. I think the cardholders question is really interesting. So in library service, it's always about developing that membership. And I think obviously that's partly around understanding it as well. So we've started to kind of look at that. I think that what we need to do, again, as Stuart's alluded to, is there's probably no one single point of truth. We'd have to try and bring it together to get that full understanding. I think we've got all those pieces. We just need to do some more of that, to developing as part of the strategy going forward. And in terms of AI, am I right in saying that's in the bylaws? We are very cognizant of it. I'll let Crystal talk more about it. I think one of the elements that's already been touched on is the role of our library staff in being that kind of trusted source of truth. So if someone goes in and they're not sure, is this real, is this fake, I don't know, then staff in the libraries can help with that support. And I think, again, that's a really important kind of community benefit that the libraries bring.
Thank you. Just to pick up on the ethnicity point, we do ask our customers for that information when they sign up, but it's voluntary, it's not mandatory as part of our system. So we explain why we'd like to capture it, but of course not everyone is willing to give over quite personal information. So we do have some cross-cut data around ethnicity as well, and we do ask it in our annual survey as well. So we kind of have a picture, and of course, you're right, we're not reaching all areas of the community at all. And so what we're doing is that on the ground work with our partners, both internal to SEC and external, about, okay, how do we reach these communities? How do we meet them where they're at? And a really good example was I had a very good meeting with the team who look after refugees yesterday, in fact, and about how are we translating what we've got in libraries as well, because it's not just enough for them to come across our threshold. They have to be able to access what we're telling them. So that's where we're working in that area. And again, it's trial and improvement at every turn around this. And then to pick up on AI, funnily enough, I'm running a session for our friends groups tonight on AI. I did an in-person session a couple of weeks ago because it is an area of interest. We did have an AI policy, which I'm rewriting at the moment, although it feels a bit like the Fourth Bridge, because as soon as I finish writing it, it's probably going to be out of date, unfortunately. But the point is, and Molly picked up on it really well, was about the role of libraries in this, and it's about mis- and disinformation. AI is a tool of good, but can also be a tool for, I wouldn't say evil, but it can be for bad actors, bad faith actors, trying to get wrong information across. And so not only are we making sure our staff have the skills to discern that, and then that can come through that offer at the same time. And you also asked about AI stock. At present, we do not, as far as we know, stock anything that is written by AI, because we are very supportive of the creative endeavours and the creative industry and what comes from the human mind at this point, because what AI does is basically scrape the intellectual capital of writers and mush it together basically for profit, which is not what we're about. So that's not to say, 10 years down the line that may change, but again, it comes back to openness and our ethics. So that would always be flagged so people can make a discerning choice about what they read.
Thank you. That was very reassuring to hear that last bit in particular.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. I'd agree with that. Thank you. So we've got Councillor Mummery.
You have approximately £1 million set up still in the coffers. Is it about £1 million?
So,
I
so
think
there's
you've
a
got about £1 million
So
still.
there's a difference between what we've spent and what we've committed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so the vast majority of that money has been committed. It just hasn't all gone out of the coffers yet, basically.
So there isn't the £1 million remaining from the fund?
There won't be by the end of the financial year, no.
No, okay. And the other question is, I don't know, because unfortunately I don't use the library. I tend to, like the gentleman here, buy a book and then pass it on. So do we still fine people who don't bring their books back? And how are you getting on with that? Can they pay cash? Has it got to go on the internet? Have we got to use a card? And are they actually... I remember getting a hefty bill when my daughter was at university, a hefty bill. So how are you tackling that? Because obviously that will be a source of income for you as well. I mean, as well as, are they paying?
Yes, so we prefer to call them charges because I think fines has a negative connotation about it. So yes, there are charges that are attached to not bringing a book back, but yeah, that's all outlined on our website. And, you know, we try not to be punitive with people about this. We try and add in a human layer. So what I'll always say to people, if you do have a fine, and let's be honest, I always have a fine, come along, come and speak to us. We're human. Sometimes people have mitigating circumstances, and we'll always add that human layer in. And then recently, as part of the year reading, during January and February, we ran a fines amnesty for people, as well as a means to encourage them back, because actually that is what is more important for us, is people in our libraries. We don't view it as an income stream, if you see what I mean, in that strictest sense. And also, we're one of the library services in the country that do not fine on children's books either. And that's a really important part of our ethos.
And if
unfortunately, yes.
They're very, very expensive, and they go walkies, and you know. But yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. Point, actually.
Thank you.
I'm not quite sure why it's appropriate, but I was just seeing if somebody else would cover it. Somebody did earlier mention about the staff transferring over, but the specific question I had is on pay rates. Obviously, I'm not expecting you to go into details of individuals or amounts. I was just, really the question is, when staff transfer over from what they're currently receiving to the new rates in April, you said, will there be anyone who will be worse off, or are they all going to be on the same or better? But also more specifically, I was just concerned, will there be some people who will be on the same amount, but others that will get more, and then you might get a bit of resentment or division amongst them?
Thank you. Gary, you've got a question to answer.
Thank you. I'm Gary, you may remember me from the start. No, nobody will be worse off than they are currently. All of the jobs that people are transferring onto have been mapped against our internal job evaluation scheme, so they are SCC jobs. So if 2 members of staff are mapped to a grade 3 job, they will both be paid within that grade. We've also made sure that where people are moving across, they are moved across to the next highest SCC point. So nobody will move across at a detriment. So if the nearest spinal column point that they can move from their current salary to the new one is less, we will move them to the next highest one. So everybody will receive an increase of some sort from the 1st of April.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. It's been a very good nearly 2-hour session, so thank you all for coming this morning and for responding to the questions. Thank you all for the questions, which I thought were very, very searching. I think we all value and appreciate the libraries, and I have 2 in my division, and I know they're very valuable for communities. I've often felt they've probably got the wrong name, because it's not just a place where you borrow a book, which I've heard today. They are community hubs in their own right, I think, and that's really important for people from a social point of view as much as anything else. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, so if we can come back at 12:10, we'll look at some recommendations. Obviously, you're free to go, but we would encourage a couple of senior officers probably to stay if you're able to while we go through our recommendations, because it does help us a little bit to get those in place. But really good meeting this morning, and thank you very much for your attendance. Okay. Right, thank you. Thank you. Wait. Thank you for coming back. Are we all back? I think we are. So we're going to look at some recommendations. I mean, obviously what we've done, as we normally do, we've captured some as we've gone through this morning's discussion. And so I'll read those out. Obviously, if there's anything else we've missed, we can put that in, and you will have an opportunity to tweak them if you need to in a couple of 3 days' time when they're sent round to you. But again, obviously thank all the officers for their hard work in giving us all the information in the papers for this morning, and for, I thought, very comprehensive answers to our questions as well. So thank everyone for coming and the information they provided. We thank the staff and volunteers for their support over the transition period. We know it's been difficult for a lot of the staff, particularly in the early days, because any change is always difficult for people. But we thank them for their support over that period. And equally thanking the volunteers, the Friends, for the work they do to support the libraries. And it was great to have a representative of the Halesworth Friends here this morning to give his thoughts. So recommendations we've captured during the session, and I'll read them out and then we can go from there, is to consider whether the governance arrangements would benefit from external oversight, review operational costs and make every effort to mitigate them and identify income generation, review the use of staffing to ensure that it is sufficiently flexible to efficiently and effectively cover operational requirements. Review the outreach service. I think that's probably going on at the moment, so perhaps continue to review the outreach service, library vans, and see how it can be developed in the future. Ensure that trend data is publicly available, and I sense we'll get some information, more data, which we can send around once we receive that. Consider data from library users and how to use it to further engage in the communities. And lastly, perhaps get councillors to support and promote the year of reading in their divisions. There's a couple of information bulletins we might ask for, I think, which came out of the meeting, is a link to the needs assessment around library use, and trend data for library borrowing statistics, what proportion of the population use libraries, have a library card, borrow physical books, virtual books, diversity, how do these compare with other counties? So I think that was a point that Councillor Bennett made. So, okay, so that's what we've captured during the session. So any others from anyone? Yes, Councillor Bird?
Can we call on the government to amend the 1964 Libraries and Museum Act and make it compulsory to read books?
I don't think we've quite got that power, Councillor Bird, but that's a fair point, I think. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Chency?
Unusual, but I've sort of got one, I think. I didn't realise about the AI course. I'd be quite interested in going on that myself. I just wonder whether councillors might be interested in that. Yeah?
I know one who won't be, but...
Okay, so is there something about training, because new councillors are trained, and it might not be for straight away, but something in the future about training on AI and how to spot and help residents, and I don't know, I just feel as if there's...
I take your point, but is that relevant? Is that relevant to the library? It's probably relevant to the whole councillor sense, isn't it? Wider, yeah. So, yeah, okay. Okay, I think I'll leave that to you to promote in your next position. Okay, right, as I said before, obviously we'll send these round. You'll have another opportunity to tweak or amend or add anything before we finally publish them. But I think the deadline is quite tight because it's got to be done by next week sometime, as I expect. So, okay, so brilliant. Well, thank you very much. We've got 2 or 3 more items just to go through, but obviously you're welcome to leave. Thank you very much. 7. That's all right. All right. Page 47. All right. On page 47, so we've got information bulletins there. If there's any comments, you know we don't normally have any discussion on these, but if there's anything you wish to, any comment you wish to make, obviously we will do that. And if there's anything that concerns you, we can recommend it goes on the forward work programme for the next committee. Ms. Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On the recycling thing, is there an analysis or any thoughts about how this might affect the Suffolk County Council's recycling centres? Is it going to involve more doorstep recycling and therefore less use of the recycling centres? Does it have any potential impact on that?
You don't think you were on the committee when we looked at simpler recycling, were you? But I think we might have touched on that at that point. Perhaps, Catherine, could you look back to the minutes of that to see if there's anything in there, relevance? I mean, we'll note it, because obviously I think that's going to be something which whoever takes over is going to have a big involvement in, I would imagine. Because it seems to me a little bit of a, I mean, some counties are on time and some aren't, and I think it's going to be a bit of a muddle, personally. So I think that's an important aspect, but we'll see whether that was covered in the simpler recycling scrutiny we done about a year ago.
Oh,
so,
okay. I'm sorry I missed that, because
no,
I have a particular
right.
bee in my bonnet about the continuing requirement to book online, and I think it's a barrier to people using the recycling centres.
Yeah.
But I've raised that at Cabinet and other places.
Yeah, I mean, well, Kath, if you're interested, I mean, Catherine, you could probably send Councillor Bennett the minutes of that particular scrutiny, and you can have a look through that. And I think it was mentioned, wasn't it? So, yeah. Well, exactly. I think that's what I said at the end. It's nothing simple about that at all, to be honest. So, okay, thank you for that. Yeah, yeah. We'll put on the forward walk programme as well, as I say. Anything else then? If not, we'll move on to...
Chair, I was just going to, after what Councillor Bennett said, I think that one of the biggest concerns is around the loss of income to charities, because more stuff is going to be collected at the roadside. So if we are going to suggest it for the forward plan, I mean, for instance, I know that a lot of village magazines are sending round a plea to the residents: don't recycle your glass at the roadside, bring it to the village hall, because that's a real concern. And so that's something which, if we are going to have a look at it, or an information bulletin, I think that's something that we ought to bring into it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the key decision forward plan. I mean, clearly we can't dictate what the next committee will want to look at, but we have got some things on the forward work programme. Catherine and I went through it. We took some things off which have been on there for some years and we'd never sort of looked at, which have, moved on in a sense. But I think there are some things on there if the new committee wants to pick them up. There's some quite interesting topics on there. So we haven't left it blank, and we haven't left hundreds of things. We've left some things in there which we think are relevant, and the new committee, whoever they are, will pick that up, hopefully. So any comments on that key decision forward plan at this point? No? Okay. Yes. Okay.
Other members haven't got any comments on the key forward decision plan. I do, if you'll allow me a little indulgence, would like to say a few words at the end of this scrutiny session. This is the last meeting, as we know, of the committee before the elections. It's been mentioned earlier. During the last almost 5 years, we've looked at a very wide range of topics, and many have been one-off subjects, such as the scrutiny of the Goldwing Bridge, response to Storm Babette, and indeed today's review of Suffolk Community Libraries. Others have been more regular visitors, such as highways and the budget. During that time, membership of the committee has changed enormously over those years, and there's just a few of us, I think, have been on for the 5-year term. However, one of the great sources of constancy has been you as our chairman, Councillor Ladd. We've always found you to be approachable and acting without fear and favour, guiding us if we strayed, which at times we have, and trying to bring us back on track. Never an easy job to chair a committee, but I think your determination to get the best from scrutiny on every occasion is testimony to your role as chair. As vice chair over recent years, it's been a pleasure to work with you, Michael, and indeed our officers, Catherine and Susan. As a committee, I think we owe a great debt of thanks to all three of you for your time working on effective scrutiny of Suffolk County Council. Michael, we know that you'll be retiring this election, so may I, on behalf of all the committee, wish you all the best in your future endeavours.
I'd like to say it's been a real pleasure, but I can't lie. No, I appreciate that, and I think I should offer my thanks, as it is our last meeting as this committee. I'd like to say that how much of a pleasure it's been to work with all the members over the last 5 years. You say the committee has changed a bit from when we started, but it's been a real pleasure. And I particularly thank my two vice chairs, not only sort of Keith over the last few years, but also Councillor Sarah Adams, who was the chair when I took over 5 years ago, and all of the witnesses who have come in during that particular time for all the topics that you've mentioned there. I've had some really good, I think, meetings, some really good recommendations, and one hopes that we have made some difference to those particular topics as well. And finally, yes, I'd like to thank all democratic services, but particularly Catherine and Susan, who have kept us on the straight and narrow all of those years. And fair to say that without them, we couldn't have actually done our job for the Suffolk residents. So thank you all very much, and good luck to the new committee when they take over, whoever they might be. I mean, I'm sure some of you probably might be back and do that, but others won't. But scrutiny is such a valuable committee in any county council, and done right, as I said, it can add real value to those directorates. So thank you all very much, and I think it's good night from me and good night from him, I think. You're all now free to go.